Wayne Couzens and his life inside of Monster Mansion, which is HMP Frankland. Even though we all know HMP Wakefield is the original Monster Mansion, HMP Frankland has now also become known that because of the type of inmates that are in there. And Wayne Couzens is one of those monsters. Now he is living in fear of his life, and he is also asking for extra protection because he believes, which is rightly so and is rightly true, that he is on the list to get the same treatment as Ian Watkins and Kyle Bevan. Now the reason I'm speaking about him as well is because there's a few articles popped up online which is as recent as yesterday, the 3rd of December 2025, and in these articles that I've been reading through, they're talking about his life behind the walls of Monster Mansion. So for those of you, which I don't think there'll be very many, who will not know who this absolute monster is. Now Wayne Couzens, which I will start off by saying, he was a serving police officer at the time, a Metropolitan police officer at the time that he committed this horrendous offence, which I'm going to talk through before I get into his life behind bars inside of HMP Frankland. Now, a couple of these articles that I read through as well, I was quite surprised to come across my own name. When in the article, I'm going to read it in a bit, it says Ricky Colleen has told us about the bounty on his head inside of HMP Frankland, which he has got. He's got a bounty on his head, and he is in line for prison justice. Now, even though the case was very high profile, he's a police officer in prison. Coppers, who are also bacons, ironically, who end up in prison, are in the firing line for fucking prison justice of anybody, to be honest. Even the bacons will be wanting to get a piece of him because he's a copper or an ex-copper. So on the evening of March the 3rd, 2021, Wayne Couzens used his position as a Met police officer to handcuff poor Sarah Everard and force her into his car. She was never seen alive again after that fateful afternoon when he abducted her. In a crime so appalling that it sparked protests across the country, 33-year-old Sarah was raped and murdered by Couzens, who had already been accused of a series of essays on a child before beginning his policing career. I've spoken about this previously. If they'd looked into him properly as well, he should never have become a copper in the first place, because he had one intention in mind as he was becoming a police officer, and that was to abuse his power and go on to do what he actually done. But I do believe that there would have been more than this. This is not a first offence. This is something that he has done previously. So the married father of two who had driven marketing executive Sarah from South London to Kent, then burned her remains. He didn't just do that, he went on to actually burn her remains before discarding them in a woodland, meaning her devastated family didn't even have the chance to look upon her face one last time. How fucking despicable and bad is that? Bad enough what he done, never mind going on to burn her body and dumping her in woodlands as if she was nothing. So that horrid piece of shit is obviously, like I've mentioned, is going to get his comeuppance inside of high security prison. The horrifying case brought the issue of violence against women to the forefront, but more than 4 years on, an alarming report has found that too many offenders are slipping through the cracks as a result of critical failure to record crime. Lady Angeloni, who was leading an inquiry established following Sarah's murder, found that many predators, many bacons, are still getting away with their crimes, and that schemes created to prevent them are often just words. So that horrible monster, who is now 52, locked up inside of Frankland. It goes on to say, obviously also known as Monster Mansion, where updates on his grim life have continued to spark outrage and contempt. So in March 2022, Couzens had been permitted to buy an Xbox 360 as a reward for good behaviour. And as I've mentioned previously, any prisoner who gets on the enhanced scheme, when you first go in, you're on standard, everybody is standard. And then obviously, whatever or how you react inside a prison and behave, you will then go on to be an enhanced prisoner where you get more luxuries, as in this case. But he actually went on to complain afterwards, to whinge when he learned that he wouldn't be allowed to play violent shooting games. So I remember when I was inside, 18 games, 18 DVDs. It was DVDs at the time, everyone remember them. And any 18 rated games or DVDs or movies of the sort are not permitted to be watched or played inside of prison. That means he cannot sit in his cell playing Call of Duty and Gears of War. He was mourning about that, and will have to content himself with things like motorsport and fantasy games. It is probably best for him that he stays in his cell away from all other cons anyway, but it is pretty sick that he wanted to play the shooter games, given the fact he was obsessed with guns before he killed poor Sarah. And that is what type of horrible monster he is. But I've done a video previously, maybe it's a year or so back, maybe it's a couple of years actually, when he struck up a friendship inside a Frankland prison with no other than the morgue monster. The morgue monster, David Fuller, I've done a video on him as well. He is, like it says, an absolute monster of a man. And these two horrible, despicable cretins have struck up a friendship, and fuck knows what else that friendship will entail when they've got the door closed, playing with each other inside of that pad. Absolute wrong-uns, the pair of them. So in April 2022, that was when Couzens had struck up the stomach-churning prison friendship with morgue monster David Fuller, who defied the bodies of more than 100 dead women. It was then said how the pair bonded after being locked up on the same wing in HMP Frankland, revealing we call them the odd couple. So like I've stated previously on doing these videos, obviously I get inside information, and A-Wing inside of Frankland houses these horrible monsters. That's why it's now become known as Monster Mansion. Because not only these two that I've just mentioned, you've then got Ian Huntley, Levi Belfield. These are the ones that are all housed together on the same wing so that they can keep extra eyes on them, because all of them are high priority for attack. So obviously it's easier for the screws and the governors to house them all on the same wing, and obviously the ones that get put on the same wing with them are checked and vetted. Even though they're all bacons, there is lads down there from normal location who've ran up drug debts, and they've snitched on the other cons, so they've went down there for protection. They've been scattered, they go down there, but even though they've been into drug debts, they get down there, they're still going to be getting off their heads, because it's readily available on them wings as well. So when they get off their heads and they bump into the likes of these, what do you think is going to happen? So obviously the screws make sure the ones that they put on are not going to be a danger or a threat to them, and they're all monsters in their own fucking ways. So it goes on to say in this article, as well as both being depraved criminals, Couzens and Fuller apparently have other things in common, including being from Kent and reportedly enjoy chatting together. They know some of the same areas from back in the day, where they'll be swapping ideas and sick fantasies about that area. And it says the idea of them swapping stories churns the stomach of the screws on A-Wing. Former electrician Fuller was banged up for killing Wendy Nell and Caroline Pierce in Tunbridge Wells, Kent, back in 1987. He was finally caught for the so-called bedsit murders 33 years after committing the crimes, thanks to the advance of DNA technology. Fuller, who recorded sickening footage of himself defying dozens of bodies between 2008 and 2020, was handed 2 life sentences for the killings, plus a further 12 years for abusing the corpses at Kent Hospital, where he once worked. And when I did the story on him, and I'd done a full video on him talking about it, he was even a woman who had actually lived her life up until 100-year-old. He actually went on to do the exact same thing to her body when she was in the morgue. How absolute gross and fucking disgusting. So in April 2024, Couzens made a formal complaint after authorities blocked the delivery of a gift from his mother intended to mark his 50th birthday. You cannot have stuff sent direct in from family members. It has to come from a well-known source. More so on the high security estates, they use the M&M catalogue, things like that. You can't have gifts. The only gifts you can get is money, so you can then put it aside and then buy yourselves a closed parcel or Xboxes, hi-fis, those type of things. So the incident, which occurred in December 2022, saw Couzens rage over not being allowed the parcel which contained a book and some clothes, as per standard policy that forbid inmates from receiving parcels sent from home, like I've just stated, for obvious reasons. Because these parcels could contain anything, or they could have been dipped in something which can then be used as contraband inside of prison. In a complaint made at the Prisons and Probation Ombudsman, Couzens reportedly moaned that these rules had not been explained to him properly, meaning he and his family didn't know that he was not allowed gifts from home. Where the fuck do you think you are in the Marriott getting gifts sent from your family members? Arguing that his mother had been left out of pocket. Poor fucking mother. Shouldn't have been sending the despicable wronging gifts anyway. The convicted rapist, the murderer, even went as far as to suggest that she be financially compensated. Well, you can tell it's a copper with a copper mentality going on like this still inside a prison, saying these are the rules, you've got to abide by them. He's trying to tell the screws and the staff what it should be and what it shouldn't be. All of them fucking things went out the window when you done that crime against Sarah Everard. You lost all your privileges. You should have been locked in a dungeon for the rest of your fucking sorry life. A source told the publication it might seem incredible after his case horrified the country, how he took advantage of his police status to target, deceive, rape and murder poor Sarah, that Wayne Couzens was doing this. But that's exactly what happened. Just a year on from getting his life term, he was writing busybody letters of complaint about not getting a birthday present. The whole episode was unbelievable, as you can quite imagine. And like I've just said, and like it says there, the source that went and delivered this info, a busybody, exactly, a busy, going about this, thinking that he's entitled to these things, thinking that he's entitled to more than the other prisoners. He's the worst of the worst type of prisoner. So this is when the article which I come across, because it's come on to say, in March, reformed prisoner Ricky Killeen spoke about how Couzens will likely spend the rest of his days behind bars looking over his shoulder, especially given his former career in the police. This is obviously everything that I've stated, but I will go over it because it's in this article. And they're saying Killeen instead of Ricky, but I'll just read what it's in front of us. Killeen, who served 5 years at Frankland Prison for his part in a machete attack. Now, if you're watching this and you're listening to this, my part in a machete attack, go and have a look in the playlist section and you will see exactly why I was in prison and what happened leading up to the machete attack. It wasn't just some innocent member of the public. It was a like-minded lad in the area who attacked me sister, so I then went on to attack him. That was the reason I got my IPP, and that was what I was in prison for. But I'm sure the majority of you will have seen the Frankland documentary. If not, it's on my 5 catch-up. And like I say, go on to the playlist section on here, go to the podcasts, and then the playlist section rather, and then you'll see it on there. I'll go on to say in this article, obviously they become number one targets because people in prison don't like police anyway. And if they get incarcerated, they are going to come under attack. If it is a high security prison, the violence is likely to be extreme, like I've said, and like you've seen in HMP Wakefield. When they're coming after somebody like that, it's not just going to be with the fists, it's going to be with something sharp and jagged, and they're going to try and end his life, which I believe will happen at some point in his sentence, and this is why he is absolutely shitting himself at the moment, especially with the recent murders in high security estate. And I did say there's going to be a spate of copycats, and we're just waiting for the next one. And I'm going to take a random pick, and I do believe, not that I can see into the future, there's going to be a one soon in the HMP Frankland. So if it is a high security prison, like I've just said, they will either get slashed, they will get stabbed in the neck, they will try to take their eyes out, they will chuck boiling hot oil over them, or use boiling hot kettle full of sugar. Grim stories have previously emerged from behind Frankland's notorious walls, including attacks on prisoners and guards. One incident saw an inmate suffer bad burns to the head after he was assaulted with a mixture of boiling water and melted butter, a makeshift weapon known as swilling, which intended to deepen painful burns. And I've seen this firsthand. I've seen a terrorist get hot oil tipped over the back of his head and all of his skin peeled off. And this is another way that they get at these type of inmates. On other occasions, weapons have been crafted using objects such as a broken DVD player and a shattered ceramic toilet pan. So you can imagine booting the toilet off, getting a jagged piece of that. It is not going to snap when it gets inserted into somebody. So these are the type of tools that are used inside the prisons. So it's thought that Couzens could be even more at risk of such attacks for being a police officer in a Cartier prison would make him a number one target. But to be such a high-profile prisoner means there is zero chance he can be on a normal wing. Obviously not. He will have a bounty on his head for the rest of his days. Couzens will be serving out his life sentence in segregation. Well, not in segregation. He's on that wing that I mentioned previously. He will be on a small but vulnerable prisoner wing kept far from the main population at all times, where there are lower levels of association. Now, Couzens will never be released from prison. He is serving life without parole, so everyone can take a bit of glee away knowing that for the rest of his sick days inside of prison, he will be in fear of attack. There will not be one single day when he comes out of that pad where he will feel comfortable. But if he does, and when that day comes, that will be when he is at his most vulnerable, and that will be when the prisoners strike. So I did go on to talk about when he had a heart attack inside of prison as well. I've done a story on that, which was there in the headlines. But I will talk a little bit about this because it's mentioned something about when he underwent an operation to make him more comfortable. So in June, it was reported that Couzens had been transported to an NHS hospital to undergo a lumbar procedure, a spinal operation which cost the NHS approximately $7,000. The cost of moving Couzens, who was taken from Frankland in a bulletproof van accompanied by a high security escort, was estimated to be $10,000. So I've mentioned these ones as well previously. When they take these type of prisoners out to an outside hospital, they have to have helicopter support for obvious reasons in case there is a chance of escape, and they could not risk this type of prisoner escaping. But I feel so sorry for the nurses, the NHS staff that had to see, imagine, not knowing on that day when you're on duty, This horrible bacon comes onto the ward, and you have got to have a duty of care towards him and look after him. That must have been so hard for the staff to do that. But also, can't find it in this article that I'm in, but I did do a video when he did have a heart attack inside of prison. I'm not sure what that one was all about there. That, obviously the lumbar puncture, but he did have a heart attack, so that was another occasion where he had to go out to outside hospital, and the poor NHS staff had to look after that absolute wronging. But like I've said, he's now living his life out in fear inside of HMP Frankland. But I can't wait for that day when I bring the news that Wayne Couzens has finally faced up to prison justice. Because as far as I can see, he has never been attacked as of yet. David Carrick, I've done a video on him, another horrible bacon police officer, has been attacked inside of HMP Belmarsh. But Wayne Couzens' days are numbered, so keep watching, people. I will be doing a video on him hopefully soon when he's been attacked inside of Monster Mansion, when the monster faces up to some real justice. But I'm going to leave that one there for now, people. Hopefully you are still enjoying the content. And as usual, if you are, remember to comment, like and subscribe. Take care, and most importantly, stay safe, people.